colleagues, I invite the Forum to continue its consideration of Agenda Item 2, Sub-Item C, Thematic Panel Discussions, to hold a panel discussion on Integrated National Financing Frameworks, INFFs, taking stock of national-level progress. Before we begin the discussion, I invite the Forum to hear opening remarks by Mr. Ashim Steiner, Administrator of UNDP. Mr. Steiner, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Vice President of ECOSOC, and our host here this morning. To my distinguished fellow panelists, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As we convene today for the Financing for Development Forum, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment in the evolution of our global financial systems. The need to reform the outdated, dysfunctional, and at times unjust international financial architecture, as often referred to by the UN Secretary General, is more pressing than ever. This is especially true as low-income countries are likely to allocate 1.4 times more in this year to servicing debt interest payments than, for example, to healthcare. In response, many nations are not merely waiting for overdue global reforms or the too little too late debt relief. Instead, they are proactively forging their development path through the adoption of integrated national financing frameworks. But let me be very clear here. These integrated national financing frameworks are not an alternative to addressing those dysfunctionalities, but they are principally and foremost an act of national sovereignty in a realistic and pragmatic moment of having to act while waiting for the often referred to and promised reforms. INFFs, as we view them, stand as a key success of the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. They are focused on supporting and empowering countries to advance reforms to embed sustainable development into government budgets, financial markets, and private sector operations. These frameworks align the financing ecosystem with national development priorities, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, and most recently also the Kunming-Montreal Framework. Currently, 85 countries are at different stages of developing and delivering their INFFs. 13 national and subnational governments now have an operational financing strategy, and over 50 countries are implementing reforms to financing policies, instruments, institutions shaped through their INFF. Let me share 3 insights with you about their progress. First, the emerging outcomes from the INFFs are both promising and indicative of greater potential. For just 17 of these countries, our analysis has found that $16 billion in new finance has been leveraged for investment in sustainable development alongside the alignment and scope for enhanced SDG impact of more than $32 billion. These figures show what is possible when countries take the lead in restructuring their financial systems. Benin, for example, was the first least developed country to issue an SDG bond, unlocking $500 million for investment in social sectors, environmental projects, and other areas. This success was followed by further leveraging $350 million through an innovative loan instrument, the first of its kind in Africa. Mr. President, Indonesia provides another example. It leveraged more than $10 billion through a range of diversified issuances, most recently including an inaugural sovereign blue bond. Alongside sovereign-level actions, INFFs are advancing reforms to scale up sustainable private finance. In Thailand, for example, the Securities and Exchange Commission recently introduced guidance for SDG impact-based reporting within the sustainability reporting requirements for listed firms. This initiative aims to steer the market towards SDG alignment, applying to firms with a combined market capitalization of over $480 billion. And why does it matter? Because if only public money aligns itself with SDG investments, a large part of the economy not being aligned may be investing in exactly the opposite direction. And this is why INFFs have become such a crucial tool for this discourse and dialogue on alignment. These emerging outcomes speak to the scale of transformation that is possible through the design and implementation of countries' INFFs. Second, countries are hardwiring SDGs into the design of their financial systems, directly linked to enhancing nationally determined contributions and promoting gender equality. More than 10 countries are currently piloting this joint agenda, linking their INFFs to their NDCs. For example, the government of Belize is beginning the development of its INFF, which will streamline climate finance and investment within key NDC-relevant sectors across the financial system, while retaining a focus on social sector spending and avoiding exacerbation of pre-existing public debt burdens on future generations. 30 countries indicate that their financing strategy will support gender-specific reforms. Consider the Maldives, which launched its gender-responsive climate financing strategy to drive a just energy transition. This approach underscores the potential of INFFs to support comprehensive national strategies that address both environmental sustainability and social inclusion. As all countries embark in processes of designing their third generation of NDCs for COP30, and just a couple of days ago we launched also the Climate Promise here at UN headquarters to support countries in this effort, INFFs will be critical to make the NDCs more investable. Third, INFFs are sovereign and country-owned strategies. A fundamental aspect of the success of INFFs is therefore the robust engagement of a wide range of stakeholders. Over the course of the year 2023 and early 2024, civil society organizations and private sector actors have been actively engaged in financing dialogues in at least 50 countries. This participation also involves academia, the media, the local communities, and other key actors, ensuring a diverse and comprehensive approach for countries to enhance inclusivity, transparency, and accountability in their financing strategies. For those interested in a deeper understanding of the progress in specific country examples of INFFs, I encourage you to read the report we are launching this week titled Making Finance Work for People and Planet. I don't know, Tom, if you have a copy here, but I can perhaps draw your attention later on. Wonderful green color in all the publications that I know are circulating, just to put a little plug in for that. It's a very interesting analysis of the extraordinary amount of work that I'm just touching on the surface here. The report draws from the experiences and lessons of the INFF approach at the country level and sets out 10 clear recommendations for the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development in 2025. As we approach FfD4, a profound shift in our approach to development finance is necessary. The UN Secretary-General has called reform of the international financial architecture a game changer in accelerating SDG progress. The INFF facility, backed by a consortium of international partners, including UNDP, UNDESA, UNICEF, the OECD, the European Union, and member states such as Sweden, Italy, and Spain, is ready to extend this technical assistance, facilitate triangular cooperation, and provide guidance. We invite new partners to join us in this endeavor to explore and amplify the transformative potential of INFFs. We must recognize that finance can and should be reshaped to reflect and support national development priorities. This is not merely a theoretical change, it is a practical one that INFFs embody and which the INFF facility is poised to support. Therefore, we also invite the international financial institutions to use the INFFs as organizing strategy for their investments and indeed to become even more proactively engaged in their development. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let us commit to a global financial system that supports rather than impedes national efforts towards sustainable development. By supporting country-led efforts through INFFs, we can ensure that finance serves as a cornerstone of development that is both inclusive and effective, and through INFFs defined by the perspective, the national sovereign perspective on the development of a nation. Thank you so much.
I thank Mr. Steiner for his insightful statement, and I'm pleased to welcome the distinguished presenters for this discussion, Dr. Larba Isa Kobiagda, Director General of Economics and Planning at the Ministry of Economy, Finance and Development and Chair of the INFF Steering Committee of Burkina Faso, Her Excellency Vivi Yulaswati, Deputy Minister for Maritime and Natural Resources at the Ministry of National Development Planning of Indonesia, Mr. Sanzar Bolotov, Deputy Minister of Economy and Commerce at the Ministry of Economy and Commerce of Kyrgyzstan, and Mr. Antti Karunan, Director for Sustainable Finance, Investment and Jobs at the Department of International Partnerships of the European Commission. Our lead discussant for this discussion is Ms. Rita Triharyani from Yakum. I also welcome Shari Spiegel, Director of the Financing for Sustainable Development Office at the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, who will moderate this session. I look forward to an open, constructive, and productive exchange of views. Mr. Spiegel, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for the opening remarks on integrated national financing frameworks. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank His Excellency Tarek Ladeb, a permanent representative of Tunisia, for his introduction, and also to thank Akim Steiner for his comments and work, and for the excellent work UNDP is doing on leading implementation of INFFs on the ground. It is my pleasure to moderate this session on integrated national financing frameworks. This is a timely discussion as we start preparation for the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development. As Akim Steiner mentioned, INFFs were introduced in the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. They started as an idea noted by member states to develop financing frameworks to support national sustainable development strategies. The upcoming conference, 10 years later, is mandated to also focus on reform of the international financial architecture. But as with all financing for development outcomes, it is also there's a relationship and an importance of looking at both global and national actions. In fact, that's specified very clearly in the outcomes in Monterey Consensus. Indeed, one would not be effective without the other. Our global reform efforts must respond to the needs as formulated by developing countries, and IFA reform will in turn only be effective once it's delivered and supports country-formulated and country-led plans. INFF's integrated national financing frameworks can help ensure that scaled-up international financing translates into effective investments on the ground aligned with national priorities. Excellencies, by hearing from both countries that are taking INFFs forward and from development partners that provide capacity support, I hope that today's discussion will help us better understand how we can further strengthen national processes and how they can enhance the quality of our global discussions on financing for development ahead of the 4th conference in Spain next year. With these questions in mind, please allow me to give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Vivi Yulaswati, Deputy Minister for Maritime and Natural Resources, Minister for National Development Planning from Indonesia, to start by sharing Indonesia's experiences as one of the INFF pioneers. Excellency, you have the floor.
Excellencies, panelists, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia aims to become a developed and sustainable country in 2045. It's when the country will celebrate its 100th anniversary of independence. So the country's innovative financing strategies for the SDGs have outlined in the INFF report that have been launched during Indonesian presidency of G20 in 2022. It is supported by the presidential regulations for the implementations, and also underscores the importance of stakeholders' engagement through the SDGs National Implementation Team. It's really highlighting the critical role of the integrated financing strategies. The continuations of the INFF financing strategies implemented in 2023 remains critical. It involves building a robust institutional framework and hosting capacity buildings events through the Financing Dialogue Forum, where the topics include such as faith-based financing, impact investing, and other innovative financing approaches are also discussed. Given the interconnected nature of the SDGs, progress in one indicator can drive improvements in others. So we revised the SDGs roadmap and analyzed to show that indicators with high interconnectedness are generally linked to the basic services like health and food security, safe water and sanitation, education, inequality, energy, decent housing, and the environment. This finding highlights the importance of the sector focus, particularly on the financing and also the coordinated approach to financing sustainable development. So Indonesia is actively working to bridge the SDG financing gap by promoting innovations such as thematic bonds, that's including the blue bonds that have been mentioned, and also faith-based and non-faith-based financing. There is a strong emphasis on encouraging innovative financing initiatives to support further progress for the SDGs implementations. Stakeholder engagements is also super crucial. So we support several entities like Financial Service Authority of Indonesia to align the Indonesian sustainable taxonomy with the SDGs. The taxonomy refines the standard definitions of economic activities, harmonizing economic, environmental, and social aspect with the SDGs goal. Additionally, Bappenas, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Planning, in collaborations with the Impact Investment Exchange, hosting a focus group discussions to explore and plan for issuance the non-sovereign bond like the orange bond. This is to support the implementations of the gender mainstreaming. The crucial phase for the INFF lies in its effective implementations. Strong governance and coordinations among stakeholders are the key. I hope this dialogue can strengthen a multi-stakeholders engagement and inspire concrete actions for financing a sustainable development. I would like to thank the ECOSOC for organizing this event and for this opportunity to share. I thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Sanzar Bolatov, a Deputy Minister of Economy and Commerce from the Ministry of Economy and Commerce from Kyrgyzstan, to share your country's experience with INFFs.
Thank you. Dear distinguished delegates and participants, today the Kyrgyz Republic demonstrates a significant progress in various areas of sustainable development. Just for the first quarter of this year, our GDP growth was 8.3%, and for the last 3 years, average growth was more than 6%. In the context, INFFs play a pivotal role in guiding the country's development trajectory towards achieving the SDGs. By providing a comprehensive framework for aligning national development priorities with the financing strategies, INFFs enable Kyrgyzstan to mobilize resources effectively from both public and private sectors. This ensures that investments are directed towards areas that have the greatest impact on sustainable development, such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, and environmental conservation. Additionally, INFFs facilitate collaboration between government agencies, development partners, and the private sector, fostering a coordinated approach to SDGs implementation. Through this collaborative effort, Kyrgyzstan has leveraged diverse expertise and resources to address complex development challenges and accelerate progress towards achieving the SDGs. INFF pushed for the integration of sustainable development principles into the planning and execution of infrastructure projects. This includes considering environmental, social, and economic aspects in project decision-making, contributing to sustainable development and the achievement of the SDG. Overall, the INFF has served as a catalyst for institutional and regulatory reforms aimed at improving the execution of infrastructure projects. These reforms focus on enhancing coordination, increasing transparency, stimulating private sector participation, and integrating sustainable development into infrastructure projects. INFF in Kyrgyzstan fosters partnership between public and private sectors for financing and implementing infrastructure projects, creating a conducive investment environment and improving legislation on PPPs, which have been part of the reform inspired by INFF. We promote principles of transparency and openness in infrastructure project implementation. As a result, monitoring and reporting mechanisms have been introduced to provide clearer insights into fund utilization and project progress. This has enhanced trust from both the public and investors, and strengthening cooperation among various government agencies and partners for development. To scale affordable long-term financing for investment in the SDGs, government prioritized resource allocation to SDG-related projects and infrastructure development. This includes investing in sectors such as renewable energy, health, education, and sustainable infrastructure to drive sustainable development. We created an enabling environment for private investments by reducing regulatory barriers and providing guarantees to mitigate risks, and exploring and implementing innovation financing mechanisms such as green bonds, social bonds, and blended finance models, which can motivate the private sector to implement SDGs compliant projects. And we hope and trust that all these activities will support our further national development strategy, implementing our activities, and will support us to increase the investments into social infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And also really interesting to hear from two countries at different stages and have started INFFs at different times, with Indonesia being a pioneer, and then also with countries starting later on, and how these are being used in different circumstances. So thank you, Your Excellency, for your comments. And we've now heard from two implementing countries, and I'm delighted to give the floor to one of the main providers of support to INFF, so Mr. Antti Kurhunen, Director for Sustainable Finance, Investment and Jobs, Department for International Partnerships from the European Commission. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shari, and I want to thank you, Akim Stander, also for your opening words and for the partnerships on the INFFs. So the EU sees country-led integrated financing frameworks as an essential building block for accelerating progress towards the SDGs and climate goals. This is clearly showcased here by the High Representatives of the countries who've engaged in the INFF process. What you shared with us clearly shows how transformative INFFs can be to mobilize and align both public and private financing with national sustainable development priorities. And this is indeed a country-owned process based on sovereign development strategies. There's more than ever a need for financial strategies to mobilize and align a wide range of financing sources, public, private, domestic, and international, with countries' development priorities that put the SDGs and climate and environment goals at the very center. Moreover, the INFFs fit very well together with the European Union's Global Gateway Strategy, which is the EU's €300 billion contribution to narrowing the global investment gap. This strategy pursues integrated investments focusing on transformative infrastructure, and it aims to leverage additional finance and contributes to the SDGs in line with the national priorities. It is also about putting together a 360-degree package for enabling environment. And the financing for Global Gateway consists of grants, included blending finance and guarantees for the investments, as well as technical assistance for the enabling environment. The INFFs present a huge opportunity to transform national financial systems. As partner countries make progress with the INFFs and the implementation of relevant financing reforms, the EU stands ready to engage and support in domestic resource mobilization, taxation reforms, and promoting good governance. The INFFs and domestic revenue mobilization and public finance management go hand in hand. By ensuring the efficient collection of domestic revenues and their strategic allocation and use through robust public finance management, countries are in fact in a better position to mobilize resources to finance their sustainable development. So through our collect more and spend better approach, the EU is providing support for countries working both on revenue and the expenditure side. On the revenue side, what we do, we support partner countries in increasing tax collection through efficient tax administrations and equitable tax policies. Tax revenues represent the most predictable source of financing for essential public services, including health, education, and infrastructure investments. And on the spending side, we focus on strategic allocation and efficient use of resources for the direct benefit of the population. So this includes improving public investment management as well as public procurement systems, which will in turn boost investor confidence and help attract private sector financing. We also work on budget transparency and oversight, which are essential to hold decision makers accountable for collecting and spending public funds efficiently and effectively. The European Commission is a long-time supporter of INFFs from the very beginning, and we see their benefits, both for our partner countries to strengthen planning aligned with the SDGs and for ourselves to enable a better tailored support. In this context, and to meet the strong demand coming from the countries, the European Commission and several member states are financing the INFF Technical Assistance Facility. Increasing amount of INFFs highlight the importance of sustainable finance in mobilizing private financial flows at scale towards investments needed for sustainable transition. And this is the team of a high-level expert group mandated by the Commission and whose final report will soon to be published, I believe, as soon as next week. The recommendations will feed into Commission's preparations of comprehensive strategy to scale up sustainable finance in low and middle-income countries. As Team Europe, we are working also on a Global Gateway flagship initiative to promote green bonds in partner countries in order to accelerate flows of domestic international capital towards sustainable investments there and to help grow national green bond markets. And also, as a Team Europe approach, and in cooperation with regional development banks and multilateral partners such as UNDP, we are creating Sustainable Finance Advisory Hub to provide technical assistance on setting up sustainable finance frameworks and sustainably related instruments in partner countries. And finally, I would like to highlight that we encourage the countries to use TOSSD data as part of the mapping of resources available in the assessment and monitoring phases of their INFFs. TOSSD is a comprehensive statistical framework to measure the full array of official resources and mobilized private finance supporting sustainable development. And interested cooperation partners are welcome to join the International Forum on TOSSD. So as you can see, promising and exciting developments are ahead of us, and with the help of the INFFs, we can accelerate progress on SDGs. We look forward to continuing this journey together with the UNDP, with INF partner countries, and with all of you. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your comments and for all of the support that the EU is giving to this work. And also, I just want to again thank the countries that are involved. For sharing your experiences here today, and also this whole week, for sharing your experiences in the many side events and discussions, because that's really one of the purposes of the FfD Forum, is to bring together all the experiences from countries so we can all learn from each other. And so really thank you both for today and for the whole weeks of participation. I'm now going to INFFs are designed to be inclusive processes, as you actually heard very much from the Indonesian comments, and that can bring the voices of civil society into financing policy-making processes as well. And so I'm delighted to invite Ms. Rita Triharayani, sorry about that, Yakum, and civil society for FFD mechanism to share their perspectives. So over to you.
Thank you. I'm Rita Triharyani, woman with disability from Indonesia. I would like to share our experiences and lessons learned from Indonesia that are developing INFF. I'm talking on behalf of Indonesian civil society Yakum, people with disability, and civil society organization FFD mechanism. First, we highly appreciate the efforts of the Indonesian government, specifically the Ministry of National Development, for integrating INFF into our National Development Plan. We appreciated that the importance of the findings from the INFF stock-taking report, which were presented yesterday. These findings take this conversation to another level. We have now a body of evidence that we can welcome, review, and challenge. From the perspective of the CSO community, we will review this evidence according to 3 benchmarks: the inclusiveness of the INFF implementation at the country level, the impact of the reforms under INFFs, and the need to complement this approach with systematic areas such as tax and debt. INFF presents an opportunity to create an inclusive platform to support sustainable development and monitor progress, which must be involve local and national actors. And this good practice can be replicated for SDGs reporting to make it more accessible for national and local actors. Furthermore, effective and inclusive monitoring and evaluation and learning mechanism need to be in place for INFF with meaningful engagement of local CSOs. The implementation of INFS should stay consistent with Addis Ababa Action Agenda, which emphasizes that every country, including developing countries, has primary responsibility for its own economic and social development. However, policies and strategies for poverty alleviation and sustainable development should be fully supported by enabling international economic environment which maximizes the existing effective financing national mechanism whenever relevant and possible. Unpiloted global system may potentially be seen as a burden unless strong political buy-in have been paved or previously committed. Based on our finding in Indonesia, CSO play a crucial role in development effectiveness by providing valuable insight into community needs, advocating for marginalized groups, and ensuring that programs are inclusive and responsive. Government and development partners must create an enabling environment to make development funds more accessible for local CSO through simplified funding mechanisms. Avoid pre-financing by local actors and bridge partnership between CSOs and private sector. The excellency so far, the process of monitoring the implementation of human rights and UNCRPD has become a kind of model that can strengthen accountability and improve implementation at the national level with the involvement of the international community. Our inputs, maybe this can also inform the reporting and financing process of INFF. It is also to strengthen the coordination and collaboration in the country between government and civil society. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments, those very insightful comments. And this concludes the ministerial roundtable, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Tarek Ladeb for the interactive dialogue. Apologies.
Thank you very much, Ms. Spiegel, for moderating the panel discussion. Dear colleagues, now I open the floor for interactive discussions. And as we have mentioned in the first session, delegations wishing to intervene are invited to request the floor by pressing the microphone button. Also, I would like to remind speakers that the time limits of 2 minutes for national interventions and 3 minutes for statements on behalf of groups will apply. And to ensure proper interpretation, delegations are asked to speak at a normal pace and to provide a written copy of their statements by email to e-statements. I have on my list first representative of Uganda. You have the floor.
Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to share with you Uganda's remarkable journey in developing and implementing the INFFs. Under the strategic leadership of the UN Resident Coordinator Office and the Ministry of Finance, Uganda has made significant strides towards aligning development planning and financing. Allow me to delve into the key aspects. We had the joint program on the INFF in 2020. We embarked on a joint program known as the Integrated Financing in Uganda, led by UNDP and involving agencies like UN Women and UNCDF. The program's objectives were to enhance alignment between development planning and financing, prepare a comprehensive national financing strategy, and improve public finance management. Then the other intervention was the program-based planning and budgeting. Uganda shifted from sector planning to national development planning using programs. The 20 national programs were identified and prioritized, each with detailed program implementation action plans. And the third intervention was the alignment of between national and local plans. UNDP supported and facilitated the alignment of 176 local governments development plans to the national development plan. This ensured coherence and synergies between national and local development priorities. The other intervention was the development of a roadmap to the parish development model, known as the PDM. The PDM aims to achieve socio-economic transformation at the village and community level. The parish serves as an epicenter for development activities, fostering integrated approaches. Then the other intervention was the certificate of budget compliance process. Uganda revised the methodology of assessing alignment between development planning policies and budgetary frameworks. This certificate of budget compliance now evaluates both national and local levels. And the Integrated National Development Policies and Strategies, we launched key policies and strategies, including the Development Finance Assessment, the Public Investment Financing Strategy, the Roadmap for SDG Implementation, and the National Industrial Policy 2020. So all these are interventions that were created by the INFFs. We also have the private sector engagement. The UNDP supported the creation of the investment map for Uganda and the use of market intelligence tools to assist private investors by providing insights into the local market conditions. And we also had support to gender-responsive budgeting from the UN Women and mainstreaming climate actions, development of a national green taxonomy and framework for innovative financing options. We've also had support to creation of a project preparation fund and constituted the resource alignment committee allocated institutional responsibilities for all the financing options in the public investment financing strategy. What we are looking to next is monitoring and reviewing and governance of all these activities, which will be an iterative process that will be undertaken concurrently along with the implementation of the PIFs. And in conclusion, Uganda's experience with the INFFs demonstrates the power of collaboration, strategic planning, innovative financing. As we embark on this journey, we remain committed to mobilize new resources and efficiently utilize public funds for maximum impact in order to achieve sustainable development for all. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Uganda, and I move to our colleagues from civil society, and I give the floor to the representative of Action Aid, to be followed by the representative of Reality of Aid Africa. So, Action Aid, you have the floor.
Still good. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. And very many thanks to the distinguished speakers. I would like to start by aligning myself with the comments coming from my colleague Rita. specifically recalling the importance from the CSO perspective of 3 areas of concerns: the nature of the reforms under INFFs, the role of CSOs and other stakeholders, and the policy space for countries. This said, I would like to note that we were having this kind of conversation last year, so it's great to come together again and to take stock of progress. And I would like to say that it's amazing the amount of information that we have today about the implementation of NFFs at local level. We're going to look into this body evidence carefully. We are impressed at the data telling that in 50 countries, CSOs have been involved in this process. Let me briefly go back to the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, specifically to the Chapter 9 where INFFs are included. Chapter 9 is possibly one of the most seminal sections in Addis Ababa Action Agenda because it refers also to the policy space for countries and the role that the international community should have in preserving that political space. I think and I believe that we can agree all that it's very important to implement the entirety of that Chapter 9. So in short, going back to the evidence coming from the taking stock exercise about NFFs, it's impressive to notice that about 140, 150 reforms are in place in countries. So possibly we might think about the next step. And I would suggest that the next step is to learn from these.
I thank the representative of Action Aid, and I give now the floor to our last speaker on my list, the representative of Reality of Aid Africa. You have the floor.
I thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My name is Vitalis Major, and I speak on behalf of CSO FfD mechanism, also on behalf of Reality of Aid Africa. Mr. Chair, I think one of the issues that we need to critically look at is the demand that INFFs is creating at the national level, especially with regard to the issue of resource mobilization. And in that regard, the question of having more resources flowing in the partner countries is going to be very crucial, and we hope that indeed ODA levels will flow more given the clarity of the needs of those countries as things stand now. The other issue that we also want to bring to the attention of the floor is really that INFFs create opportunity for better collaboration with civil society organizations at the national level, and we hope that we are going to really strengthen by this kind of collaboration by institutionalizing and creating an enabling environment for civil society to be more active in indeed monitoring, but also be implementing partners of the frameworks. We are also hoping that the INFFs do not become a framework of increasing debt burdens to countries, because increasingly we are seeing more, more opportunities to bring in private sector to make additional investment. But I think the debt burden levels also have to be an area of concern that has to be part of the framework that we think about as we mobilize. Lastly, Mr. Chair, I think it is really important to understand that with INFFs also the demand for capacity building is rising. So that countries are able to benefit from these frameworks. And in that regard, I hope that going forward, the design of capacity building assistance that's going to come to these countries is going to be demand-driven and country-led so that we have a realistic impact on that. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the representative of Reality of Aid Africa. And with that, we have heard the last speaker on my list, as I have mentioned, and I now invite our moderator, Ms. Spiegel, to invite brief key takeaways from each of our panelists and to make her own closing remarks. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, and thank you for these insightful comments and ideas. I would like to give the floor back to the panelists to answer to respond to the comments and provide concluding remarks. And I will start with Her Excellency Ms. Vivi Yulaswati from Indonesia.
Thank you. There is no one fit for all for every development challenges. So hence the critical phase for the INFF lies in its effective implementations. Strong governance and coordinations among stakeholders are the key, including the person with disabilities that already mentioned. INFF might seem as a complex concept. However, implementation process would be benefited from the guidance of the INFF building blocks, covering the whole cycle from the inception phase to assessment and diagnostic, financing strategy, monitoring and review, data quality improvement, as well as impact measurements toward the achievement of the SDGs targets. Finally, the technical assistance and capacity building mechanism for INFF implementation should be supported, while also emphasizing that INFF is a country-led, country-owned, and demand-driven framework. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And then I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Sanzar Bolotov from Kyrgyzstan.
Thank you. The Kyrgyz Republic is today working very closely with UN agencies, and recently we reported with the results on our activities from on the last year and planned activities for this year. And INFF was mentioned as one of the main tools to mobilize investments and domestic investments, and opens the economy for the, opens the way to the small enterprises, and we are looking to work closely with the UN agencies to promote INFF and into our national regulatory system. And, thank you.
So much, Your Excellency, and I now give the floor to Mr. Antti Karhunen from the European Commission, and also then to Mr. followed by comments from Mr. Steiner.
Thank you very much. I think it's really important to emphasize, indeed, that INFFs are country-owned and can really help improve the planning of the national financial strategies towards SDGs, towards climate, and towards environmental goals. They also offer a very good platform to target capacity building and technical assistance where most needed, particularly on PFM reforms. And it's very good to see that the INFFs are and play a good role and as we are now moving towards the FfD4. So we are off to a very, very promising start in the implementation as witnessed by this very good report that has been produced. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shari. And let me first of all thank very much the distinguished representatives of Indonesia, of Kyrgyzstan, of Uganda for these very applied examples, and also to my colleague Antti for the way in which the European Commission was a critical partner in actually being able to, first of all, respond to something that we had agreed in Addis Ababa, but that actually through the pandemic in not an insignificant way received an enormous boost. That we are today talking about, dozens and dozens of countries undertaking INFFs exceeded our own expectations. In fact, it put us under a lot of pressure in the UN on how we could respond. But what it spoke to is, I think, something that I also want to thank the three speakers from civil society who took the floor for, in a sense, recognizing that we're operating in an imperfect, and that is putting it neutrally, financial system. The world has more than enough finance to solve every single problem we have costed, whether through the SDG lens or through debt issues, climate transitions, etc. But quite clearly, in our world of finance today, the money is not reaching those who actually are looking for it as an investment, or it is so expensive that it precludes them, sometimes literally, from accessing capital markets or indeed other instruments. So we are struggling in a reality post-pandemic, financial crisis, inflation, debt crisis, and the general geopolitical situation where there is no simple and fast way forward in resolving some of these dysfunctionalities. I think one reason why countries responded so quickly and wanted to work with the INFF as a template, as a platform, but also as a partnership, is that it was very much, as one of you put it, country-led, country-owned. This was not a chapter 4 coming in and essentially explaining to you what your economy needs to do. This was not a creditor telling you what the conditions are for them to either offer you fresh access to funding or any other private creditor. And let us remember, in today's world, 60% of world debt is now held privately. So to me, what has been particularly fascinating has been to, first of all, see the relevance, but also the immediate willingness to implement. I think our distinguished representative from Uganda gave a fascinating set of examples of almost while the INFF was taking place, government was already beginning to act on some of the findings. And this is a very different driver of reform than one that is negotiated between creditor and debtor or between international donor and recipient. And so, colleagues, and I want to also thank civil society, we are all learning along the way on how to improve, first of all, the accessibility to this process, inclusion. We held a meeting last night where we also discussed with civil society representatives the joint research agenda on how to strengthen INFFs from an inclusion perspective. But I think what I hope, both from the report, from the, let's say, milestones and some of the examples we've heard from the countries here this morning, what this shows to you is that this is a remarkable moment of taking finance in a policy and political sense back to where it first of all belongs, in the hands of those whose lives, whose economies, whose decisions are determined by a degree of national sovereignty that so often is lost in our international financial system. Secondly, by recognizing that while we're trying to solve a global financial system set of problems, every country also can improve its domestic financial system, whether it's tax and revenue collection, whether it is allocation, and also by having more strategic allocations to sectors that traditionally would have been perhaps overlooked. To me, one of the most interesting indicators to watch is, are we going to see net incremental allocations in some of the SDG domains that traditionally are chronically underfunded because they may be marginal groups, they may be rural areas, or other issues. And I think the partnership that we also within the United Nations family have seen emerge here, whether with UNDESA, with UNICEF, we just heard the example also with UN Women. Again, I think it was in Uganda, in fact, where that example came up. This is also, I think, a reason to celebrate the INFFs as a tool of integration, of national determination, and ultimately of some greater degree of sovereignty in how finance, domestic, public, private, but also international finance, can align behind a development pathway. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much for those comments. And there's a lot's been said and summed up by our panelists, so I'll just make, I think, 5 quick points. The first was the point that was, I think the CSO pointed out so well, of just how much this has grown, even since last year when we were here, and certainly since 10 years ago when this work started. And I also want to say that the CSO comments, we really thank you for your comments, your thinking about this, the analysis of the data that's put forward, because these conversations we've had with CSO over the past years, I think have really strengthened the process, both globally and of course nationally, which the example from Indonesia really highlighted. So I think the second point is really how important that the collaboration, it's really wonderful to see collaboration happening on the ground and bringing together, as the Indonesian example showed, CSOs and governments in this process. A third point I think that we heard all week is also that when the INFF has its most value and its most power is probably when it brings different ministries together to look at these issues from different perspectives. That's the whole point of calling this integrated national financing frameworks. The real goal is to integrate across different ministries in different areas. I think my fourth point is just on that, is that we really heard today on the many different areas of the economy that INFFs are covering, from orange bonds to issues of supporting including being able to eventually work with donor countries to really highlight country needs. So that last week in DC, at all of the meetings we went to, whenever anyone was talking about the growth of the MDBs, the role of private finance and blended finance, it all comes down to, in every single conversation, well, what are country priorities and how do we make sure that all of this growth and the stimulus is really linked to country-led priorities and programs? And the INFF is a tool to help make that happen. And finally, my and one comment on the debt question. Yes, I think that there is in the thinking on the process, I think the question of debt sustainability is crucial. There was an example given this week from one country that worked on an SDG bond and then ultimately did not issue it because of their debt sustainability issues. And so definitely the question of debt sustainability has to be integrated into this process, which is an integrated process across all issues of the economy more broadly, frankly. And finally, as noted, I think by Akim Steiner, the growth has exceeded, however, our capacity, and the UN's it's grown so much that it's the ability to support it. It's grown probably faster than the ability to support it, which is really good news. The INFF facility that UNDESA is proud to be a part of, working with UNDP, UNICEF, and our partner countries, is really a wonderful place that brings together a way to bring together the UN work in this area and the UN family together in this area. And we really invite, as Akim Steiner said as well, the IFIs and others to join us in this work to really be behind country-led and country-supported and country-led programs. So thank you all so much for this conversation.
I thank Ms. Spiegel for expertly guiding the discussion, and I also thank our distinguished panelists for their substantive contribution and all delegates for participating in productive exchange of views. We have come to the end of the morning meeting. The forum will hold its concluding meeting at 3 p.m. this afternoon. The meeting is adjourned.